Good evening and welcome to Notre Dame Preparatory High School. My name is Brian Cannon. I'm the director of the Center of Mission and Ministry here at Notre Dame. Let's begin in prayer. Almighty and eternal God, we give you thanks and praise for this beautiful evening and for the opportunity to gather together for the protection of our community. We ask that you make us steadfast in our resolve to always be vigilant and to work tirelessly for those who are vulnerable or on the margins. Bless this time and make it fruitful. We make this prayer through Christ our Lord. Amen. Again, welcome. We're so glad that you are here. Obviously, there are many great partner organizations that we hope that you visit in your time here with us. If you need the restrooms, you just follow any hallway brings you around to a restroom, so you can't get lost, which is great. And we have refreshments here for everybody as well. It's my honor to welcome to our campus the Maricopa County Attorney, Rachel Mitchell.
You know, I had this microphone adjusted before you got up here. Good evening, everybody. I'm Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell, and I'm going to be leading tonight's discussion, which is, of course, on fentanyl. So thank you to all the parents, students, and teachers who've made it a point to be here tonight for our fentanyl forum. Before we get started, though, with our panel discussion, I'd like to give a sincere thank you to the Director of the Center of Mission and Ministry, Brian Cannon. Thank you very much. He not only reached out to help us create this event here, but also obviously allowed us to use this wonderful facility. So I'd also like to thank Scottsdale Police Chief Jeff Walther for attending tonight. And we also have Representative Joseph Chaplick. There you go, right there. This is your area, isn't it? It is, okay. So thanks for coming. Tonight's event would not be possible if it were not for the collaborative work between my office and our law enforcement partners, as well as local organizations who help us in combating this drug crisis. And make no mistake, it is a crisis. Throughout Maricopa County, we are seeing a significant increase in cases related to the possession, sale, transportation, and manufacture of fentanyl. Just to give you some statistics, since 2018, there has been over a 6,700% increase in fentanyl-related cases submitted to our office. And it's not slowing down. In 2023, we saw almost a 20% increase in the cases submitted to our office from the year before in 2022. We have also seen the most tragic part of this, which is a dramatic 5,000% increase in overdose deaths, many of which are fentanyl related. I want to be very clear. This is not a drug. This is a poison. It is a deadly poison. And if somebody is bringing this poison into Maricopa County, into our community, they are going to be charged and they will be prosecuted. My office is taking a very firm stance on this, but there's still a lot to be done, and we certainly need your help. Our teens, who are some of the most affected people, as well as our young adults, don't know what fentanyl is, and they don't know how deadly it can be. Teenagers should be allowed to learn from their mistakes, not die from them. But dying is what is happening. So please use the information you're going to hear from this panel to talk to your loved ones, especially your teens and young adults. Do not make the mistake of thinking, it can't happen to me. It can't happen in my family. I can't tell you how many times we've heard that. It absolutely crosses every line, socioeconomic, racial, religious, you name it. It crosses those lines. You owe it to them to have a conversation. It could be the difference between life and death. And remember what I said, fentanyl is not a drug. It is a poison, and it is up to all of us to stop it. Now, before we get going with the panel, I'd like to introduce you to a couple of people. First of all, I'd like to welcome Maricopa County Board of Supervisors Chairman Jack Sellers to the stage.
Okay, good evening. I'd like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to join the Maricopa County Attorney's Office for an in-depth discussion about the dangers of fentanyl use across our county. We will soon be joined by an exceptional lineup of experts who will share their personal experiences as well as a variety of community resources that we can all leverage to keep our families healthy and safe. While you may have heard of fentanyl or felt its devastation firsthand, you may not realize how widespread this epidemic is. According to the Office of the Medical Examiner, fentanyl deaths have increased by 4,900% since 2015. And hopefully none of the stats that I give you conflict with what our attorney said, because I don't want to get sued. They estimate that 60% of all drug-related deaths involve fentanyl. And on average, more than 3 people die every day due to fentanyl overdoses. It has become clear that fentanyl is ravaging our communities, and we must work together to put an end to these sobering statistics. The sad truth is that fentanyl addiction does not pay attention to age, race, religion, or socioeconomic status. You may have preconceived notions of who may try fentanyl, but the truth is its addictive quantities can pose a threat to any of our loved ones, from teens to seniors. I'd like to recognize Maricopa County for leading the way in combating this deadly drug, especially our Sheriff's Office, our County Attorney's Office, Public Health, and the Medical Examiner's Office for confronting this crisis head-on with an empathetic and people-first approach. I'd also like to thank today's speakers and the various community organizations in attendance for being here to help educate the public on the dangers of fentanyl. Your work is so important, and we appreciate your insights and resources. To help combat this poison, Maricopa County has created a video series and a landing page on its website dedicated to sharing real stories and valuable resources for fighting fentanyl use. You can visit maricopa.gov/fentanyl to help us get ahead of this crisis and learn the warning signs of fentanyl use and save lives. So thank you again for being here tonight, and thank you for inviting me to talk about this critical issue. Thank you.
Now I'd like to introduce you to the Mayor of Scottsdale, David Ortega, who will share some remarks. So, Mayor?
Hello, everyone. Last summer, I opened the newspaper, and sort of deep in the pages, I saw an article. It was a picture of a young adult male. And it started very angry as I read that feature. And it, along the way, had a couple sentences that sounded like an obituary. A kind son, a young person. Only 2 sentences, and it was a large obituary. And then it went back in anger about the insidiousness, the entrapment, and the loss of, well, actually the anger against the drug. It was a very unusual obituary. I'd never read one such as that. And as it went through, it was talking about a fentanyl fatality. And I was so intrigued. I read every bit, and even to the conclusion. It didn't end with, and services will be held at this location or that location, or in memory of this person to give to this cause or that cause. It actually ended very abruptly, and it ended basically saying that the one killer that this person was battling, this parent was battling, was really all the fury. And it was pretty an amazing thing. It gave me an insight of what, not how and not as deeply as a parent would experience. Well, I'm the mayor of Scottsdale. We have a city council. We have undercover agents. We have wonderful partners. And even last year, we had the largest actual drug bust in the country. It was the largest one in Arizona. It was at a short-term rental. It was about 1.5 miles from City Hall. I knew about it. We knew about it, but it couldn't be exposed because our detectives were chasing down and going for the leads that were necessary. Everyone in that cul-de-sac knew something really big was going on. They found weapons, they found heroin, but they found, I think, 480 pounds of fentanyl pills. Okay, that would kill California and us, and it was amazing. So that's how close and how at home, close to home, the danger is. We will continue to use every tool we can and depend on one another. As a parent and now as a grandparent, I'm concerned worldwide that other countermeasures and all the cooperation that it takes to really survive. But the anger, maybe that was venting, maybe it wasn't. I think it was true honesty about really the savagery of what was caused by really a evil and wicked. These are the kind of terms that we used, and it was an obituary. So I hope that, and I certainly honor A.G. Mitchell, and I want to hear more. This is part of the countermeasures that we take as a community. Thank you all for being here. Please work with us, and thank you. Your being here today means a lot to us.
Thank you, Mayor. The next person I'd like to introduce, Sherry Dukes, if you could come up here to the stage. When we said that the fentanyl epidemic is an issue that affects everyone, we meant it. And we invited Sherry to come today to talk about what happened to her son, Ethan. So thank you so much for doing this and sharing Ethan's story.
To mess with a microphone after she said that, so I may have to bend down. Let's try this. So I thank you for everyone that's here. I thank the speakers and for Notre Dame hosting this very important forum. For those attending, there are many places you could be tonight, but as a parent whose 16-year-old son died in 2019 to fentanyl poisoning, your presence at this event is greatly appreciated. Before you walked into this place, before people spoke, just by a show of hands, how many of you had heard about fentanyl poisoning or overdose? Great. If you would leave your hands up, how many are personally affected, impacted by someone they love that has died from either fentanyl poisoning or overdose? Yeah. Every room we go into, when started these conversations, you wouldn't either have people that heard about it or you wouldn't have people that were impacted. But there is now not a place that we go to that you don't either hear about it or someone that is impacted by it, whatever age that is. As I was speaking at forums such as this, it never gets easier. Talking about the most tragic day of one's life, the death of their child. So why do I speak? Why is this so important to me? 2 reasons. One, I want to make sure people have information. You get a lot of stats when you come to these things. You get a lot of numbers. But I want to make sure you understand that this is personal. This is personal for thousands and thousands and thousands of people across this country. It is not just that one person or those group of people, you know the ones. It is about all of us and making sure that we all have the information to protect each other and protect ourselves. The other thing that probably rides very strongly in my heart as a parent is I don't want anyone to experience the death of their child, their grandchild, their niece, their nephew, their sibling, their friend. Fill in the blank, whatever that role is, that person that's so important to you, you would not like them to be gone for the rest of your life, from your life. It just shouldn't happen. As a former school district administrator, I was actively involved in creating systems of support for students and family, one being substance usage and abuse programs. Yet in 2019, fake pills with fentanyl were not on my radar whatsoever. When my son died, I learned all too quickly the power of fentanyl. Using sugar as an example, and because there's law enforcement here, I'm showing you my sugar bag as well. But this is how much killed my son. This is 2 milligrams of fentanyl. This is what is in the pills that is considered a lethal dosage. You can see this, right? You can figure out which are the lethal pills and which were not just by looking at this, correct? Correct? Yeah, no one can. This is 2 milligrams. This is considered from the DEA as a lethal dosage. This is the sugar packet it came from. Typically, a sugar packet has 4,000 milligrams. That could kill 2,000 people. So I really want to think about this when we think, oh, well, if I split the pill or if I do certain things, I'll be able to find that really nasty stuff and stay away from it. You can't. Our young people cannot. No one cannot. I just really want to remember that it is undetectable. When they are getting pills, any kind of pills, we don't know what's in it or what's not in it. We just have to be careful and really think about, especially for our teenagers who sometimes make some quick decisions that are life-altering, as people have said. As parents, we work hard to set the foundation. We provide the tools. We facilitate healthy development. We have conversations that are all important to our child's decision-making. I am no different than you. I did all those things as well. My son's plans were to graduate from college in 2024. That's just a few months from now. And he was heading off to law school. So how does this young man take a pill, unknowingly laced with a lethal dosage of fentanyl, and die? That is my boy. Okay. When Ethan died, 26% of fake pills contained a lethal dosage. Remember that 2 milligrams, that very undetectable amount. According to the DEA, it is now 70% of pills, or 7 out of 10 pills. Talk about the amount of pills out there. These small, shiny little blue pills. Last year in a DEA event, it was the first time I saw a pill that ended my son's life, that changed everything that I know of life itself. It looks safe. It looks like it's not going to hurt or kill anyone. As I travel this journey, what continues to surface is the feeling is it's not my kid. And I'm not talking about the organization which is here tonight, and I applaud the work they're doing, but it is everyone's kid. It is my kid. It is kids in this room. Unfortunately, we have to have a reality that it matters to all of us. It's critical to all of us. It is also important to all of us to make sure that we're talking to people over and over again about the power of this pill, and leaving and taking out any of that mysticism of it's only for those folks or that group of folks. It's for any of us. We all need to be aware of this. It is critical also to make sure that you continue to have those conversations with children and support them in whatever may surface, whether that is substance, if it's mental health challenges, if it's dating or college or school or grades, friends, whatever that may be. Those can be some really hard conversations, but they need to be conversations that take place over and over again. I encourage you also, and I see that it's outside, to make sure that you have the life-saving naloxone in your home, and that if it's this school or any school your children, grandchildren, nieces and nephew attend, that they also have naloxone in their schools as well. As I close, here is my ask. Please make a commitment to share the information that you heard tonight. Think about what's the most important piece that's going to change either a young person's way of thinking about it won't be me, or a family to think it won't be my child. Please just think about that conversation and continue to share it. And like with anything that's in a crisis mode, we have to share it over and over and over again. It can save a life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and I can't think of a better way to honor Ethan's life than by sharing that story, so thank you so much for doing that. Now let me introduce you to our panel of experts. To my immediate left, we have Jeffrey Beaver. He is our Drug Trafficking Bureau Chief at the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. Next to him, we have Narcotics Task Force Officer Chad Martin with Scottsdale Police Department. Then we have Stephanie Siete, the Public Information Officer with Community Bridges, which is a community provider of resources, education, detox, and treatment services for substance abuse. Finally, we have Dr. Mahmood, Vahedian, emergency physician at Banner Hospital and assistant professor at the University of Arizona College of Medicine. And we will have time for questions at the end of this presentation. We have some mics set up at the bottom of both sets of stairs. So let's start off with Dr. Vahedian. What is fentanyl, and what does it do to the body? Why is it so addictive?
Thank you for having me here. Fentanyl is a synthetic opiate that was developed in the late 50s. It is 100 times more potent than morphine and 50 times more potent than heroin. The amounts that the lady was discussing, the 2 milligram, that's enough in a hospital setting. That's enough pain medication for 40 individuals, adult individuals, and you could barely see that powder. How does fentanyl work? It crosses into the nervous system, so it does upregulate dopamine, so it does have a euphoric effect, and that's what some people go after. But then it also has the other things that come with it, such as nausea, decreased mental status. The respiratory depression is the big thing. Respiratory depression, rather than being able to take big tidal volumes, big lung volumes, you start taking very shallow breaths. Rather than breathing 15 to 20 breaths a minute, you're only breathing 3, 4, maybe none. With fentanyl overdose, it's called folding fentanyl. Why? Because a lot of people, they use it, they inject, snort, smoke it, put it in their mouth, and they're sitting, they literally just fold over. And that's how they're found. They go into comatose. They become hypoxic. No oxygen, their heart stops. And when it doesn't go that far, when they do make it to the hospital, when we do work on it, one of the questions is, when was the last time I saw a fentanyl case? Yesterday I walked in at 3. There was a lot of commotion going on. I knew something was going on. Then I heard tears. I asked the doctor that was sitting beside me what's going on. A 20-year-old that had done fentanyl overdose at home. Bystanders had administered Narcan, family had. But again, when you are taking drugs that's enough for 40 people, sometimes Narcan is not enough. He died. And then I saw one of the techs outside the room. I called her over and asked her if she was okay. She was one of the techs in the emergency department. Less than 6 months ago, her brother died of fentanyl overdose. And here she was doing chest compressions on another guy that's the same age as her brother. So why is it so addictive? Because of the euphoria that it causes, and because that it can cross the blood-brain barrier. And now with these super drugs, they're coming with novel ideas as far as how they can get these drugs to cross the blood-brain barrier, which means that the potency would be that much higher. So they only have to create a little bit and get a lot of potency. So this is what we're dealing with.
You mentioned different ways that people take the drug. Is it possible to overdose by simply touching it or being around it?
Very good question. Absolutely. Like it was mentioned, you have no idea what you're dealing with. Some of these medications, just the difference between a medication and what was called a poison is the concentration, right? The concentration. Medication for one person is okay, not for 40 person going to one person. Did I answer your question? I can't remember. I have ADHD.
Touching it.
Oh yeah, from touching it, absolutely you can. Because again, they are becoming more savvy. How are we going to make these drugs more potent? They can cross the skin barrier. It's recommended to touch anytime we find a pill in the hospital. It's always with a glove and it's disposed. Yes, do not touch, do not. And I mean, they're making them look like Skittles.
Mm-hmm. Officer Martin, how prevalent is fentanyl in the Scottsdale community? Are teenagers the primary users of fentanyl, or is it widely used across different age groups?
So I've been working with Scottsdale Police Department for about 16 years, and pretty much my whole career has been in drug enforcement. When I started doing this, fentanyl wasn't even a thing. Nobody had heard of that. It wasn't around. We didn't have fentanyl arrests. We would find kids doing Adderall, Percocet, some regular pill drugs, but back then you could take those drugs, although obviously not good for you, it typically wouldn't kill you. It wouldn't be a lethal dose. Now we're seeing with these fentanyl pills, some kid is curious and wants to try one pill. First time they could have a lethal dose, overdose, and die. I looked up some stats for Scottsdale just for last year, for 2023. We had about 3,000 drug-related seizures documented. Of those 3,000, just under half of those involved fentanyl. So nearly half of the drug seizures we have for Scottsdale are related to fentanyl now. That's how prevalent it is in the community.
And is it teenagers as well as others, or?
Yes, unfortunately it affects all age groups. Luckily we don't see a whole lot in high school, the younger kids yet. But kids are curious. Where kids used to smoke marijuana a little bit, now all these pills are available. We're starting to see it in the younger ages, all the way up to the chronic users who have been hooked on drugs for years and are still taking these fentanyl pills in the older ages.
Stephanie, we've heard some of the ways that fentanyl is used. Are there specific methods that people should be particularly aware of or concerned about?
You're here tonight because you want to get educated about all drugs. And fentanyl can be in all drugs. There's no right or wrong way to do drugs. Eat it, smoke it, snort it, inject it, vape it. If you've got a kid in your life, you're concerned about vaping, yes? It is a teenage crisis. So I don't put it past that we see fentanyl in the form of liquids, powders, pills. You heard the doctor talk about fentanyl is originally a medicinal format. You know, I'm a former college instructor, and I can remember kids, young adults, talking about taking fentanyl patches, putting them on their arms, and heating them up with blow dryers. So people are creative. People being kids, being adults, it's primarily 18 to 25-year-olds. That's still a very young brain. You're still operating with that teenage brain that's gonna make poor decisions. And, we'll get into it bigger, but I think you can't hurt to hear this multiple times. We're Arizonans. We're going to see fentanyl first. We need to all be on heightened alert. Glad there's a lot of you here, but we need more of you here. You need to share this information. It's not a kid problem, it's a community problem, and fentanyl will show up in all forms. I'll do a little plug for an education event. Scottsdale's going to host, before I even got here tonight, another forum about just drug education, and I think you should learn about vaping all drugs. I know that's something that we wanted to talk about with fentanyl. You might not hear about it locally, but I speak nationally. There are cases that are being reported around this country where teenagers are vaping this stuff. And we always talk about accidental poisoning, unintentional. No one had the intention of killing themselves. But could you imagine just taking one of those pills that Sherry talked about she mentioned milligrams. I mean, it could be micrograms. Can you imagine vaping an unknown substance and no one there to resuscitate you? So just keep that in mind. There's no right or wrong way to do all of these drugs.
Okay. Jeff, how long have you been a prosecutor?
20 years now.
And how long have you been over the Drug Bureau?
Gosh, 17 of them, or I don't know, 13 of them.
Okay. So both Jeff and I are career prosecutors. Before I became politically involved, I was just a regular prosecutor and human being. And I can tell you, and you tell me if I'm wrong about this, back when methamphetamine became big in the 90s, we thought that was the kind of apocalyptic drug. And that was nothing. Would you agree with that?
I was actually going to talk about that when it was my turn to talk.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Absolutely true. Yeah, methamphetamine was the thing that everyone was scared of. Our legislators created statutes specifically for methamphetamine because of the dangers that it was. But what we're seeing with fentanyl doesn't have comparison.
So what are you seeing in terms of the cases that our office, the county attorney's office, receives? And what is the cost of fentanyl?
Well, on the enforcement, the prosecution side, we see cases of all size in the trafficking world. We have cases that we prosecute of street-level dealers, people where they're selling a few pills at the Circle K or the QT, feeding their habit. We do prosecutions of maybe the drivers, mid-level dealers, and on up. We have prosecutions of the bulk transporters of drugs, and Officer Martin and his task force. I mean, these are investigators that are bringing these cases to the prosecutor's office, and pounds, kilos of hard drugs, cartel-connected people. And so you have the small level dealers on up. And the big trend that we see is just the enormous quantities of fentanyl that we are now seeing. So 5 years ago, if we were to have a 1,000 fentanyl pill case, someone that was selling and he or she was caught with 1,000 fentanyl pills, we would have talked about that in our prosecutor group and said, wow, this is a big drug dealer. And now, unfortunately and sadly, I'm not going to call it that at all. I mean, this is more of your street level type of drug dealer, because we're seeing quantities, and Officer Martin is seeing quantities, and the mayor mentioned a seizure of well over 1 million pills here in Scottsdale. Phoenix Police Department had a 1 million pill seizure. There were a couple of young ladies that we prosecuted. There were sisters from Mexicali, and they were transporting 750,000 pills in a car. So they were in one car, in 2 duffel bags was 750,000 fentanyl pills. And so these are seizures that we are seeing unfortunately on a regular basis, and it's nothing more than sad. I don't know what the right adjective is for what we're seeing. As far as the prices go, and Officer Martin, I'm sure, can talk more about this. This is a market-based industry. So when you have a high supply, the prices are going to plummet. And so it used to be, maybe 5 years ago, that you'd be seeing $10 to $20 a pill. I remember talking to a prosecutor who works up in Show Low, Navajo County. And we were just comparing notes, and I was saying, it is $3 to $5 a pill here at that point. And he said, well, no, it's more like $20 to $25 here in Show Low. And that's just because of the availability of the drug. But now, I know in a lot of the investigations, the high-level cartel-related investigations that police are doing and prosecutors are doing, commonly fentanyl pills in bulk are for well less than $1. 50 cents a pill or less by the cartel. You want to go to Circle K or the QT and you want to buy a pill? I just finished a trial for a crime that happened in 2021, and back then, police were saying, this was in Glendale, but I think it could be anywhere in Maricopa County. That was about $3 to $5 a pill is what they were estimating during that time frame. But now it's going to be less because we are just more on the streets. And so, who knows how much can continue to infiltrate our community and how that's going to affect the price, but it's nothing but gone lower over the last few years.
So Stephanie, you mentioned that it can be in different types of drugs. Is this one of the ways that fentanyl got to be so popular, or were there other things that drove its popularity?
Try to give the short answer. But, I mean, we all heard the opioid crisis. And as an educator, I, years ago would ask people, what's an opioid and why is it a crisis? And a lot of times you are well-versed now about prescription painkillers, Oxycontin, Percocet, what have you. Those are like the little ones, and then you jump up to the siblings, heroin, and then you jump up to the queen bee, fentanyl. And there's not just fentanyl, there's other forms of fentanyl. But I like to explain to people like the mentality of American culture. It's frustrating and it's sad. We are only 5% of the world's population, yet we consume 80% of the world's supply of opioids. This is how we're dealing with stress and anxiety and just coping mechanisms. So it started out, you go back to, and try to do the shorter version, but an Oxycontin being released in 96, this new drug, Oxycontin on the market, claimed to be less than 1% addictive, and that's how we treated a lot of people, right? Then you fast forward to, gosh, you get addicted to this stuff and you try to stop using it, is what it is. Nausea, diarrhea, vomiting, muscle pain, bone pain, tremors, and shake. You're violently sick because you stopped using. The user's going to want to keep using. And then along comes the cheaper form of an opioid, and it's called heroin. Where are we at today? Fentanyl. Fentanyl just didn't show up overnight. It's been in existence, but there was just a process to this. So I do want you guys to understand the how and the why. Now, some people, rational brain, us sitting here tonight, common sense, why would you do it? If you get addicted, you have a different mindset. Your normal is completely different. Some people do fentanyl just to not get sick, to not go through withdrawal. But the biggest concern I think a lot of you have tonight is an unsuspecting person. To answer Rachel's question, like even more, yes, it could be any drug. You even mentioned the Skittles. It can look pretty and appealing to absolutely anyone. So be aware. I mean, you're here tonight. We continue to do these forums. I don't even know how many we've done, 4 or 5 at this point around the county. Stay knowledgeable. I'll reiterate that we said 7 out of 10 pills contain enough fentanyl to kill someone, right? I can remember when it was 3, 4, 5. It's 7. 42% of the general public knows someone that's died of a drug overdose. That's a brand new stat from last month. Over 4 out of 10 people just, Sherry asked us to raise our hand. We're knowing people that are dying. So we need to intervene, get information, prevent this, because it can be in absolutely anything.
Jeff, you said that there are the trends and the quantities you're seeing are just going through the roof. But where is fentanyl coming from?
Well, we know that fentanyl is almost entirely coming into our country from Mexico. The fentanyl substance itself is the DEA tells us, is coming from China over to Mexico. The pills, the most common form that we've been talking about are those little blue pills that are stamped M and 30 to mimic the appearance of an Oxycontin tablet. Those are pressed almost exclusively in Mexico, and it's brought across the country, across the border into our country, already in a pill form. And from there, being that we are a border state, we get one of the largest shares of this imported fentanyl into our community. It gets brought to stash houses, and then cartels will figure out a way to have it transported around the country or have it remain here in our community.
You mentioned the two young women that were sisters that were prosecuted by our office for bringing 750,000 pills.
That's right.
We have their pictures. So 26 and 19-year-old. Are younger people even being used to bring this over across the border?
Absolutely. I mean, there's got to be a way for the cartel to get the pills to Tucson, to Phoenix, to stash houses, to places where they can be stored and then distributed across the country. And a lot of the cases that we see are people that have the ability to cross the border, whether it be dual nationals, visas, whatever it may be, but have that ability to cross the border without being suspicious as traveling through the ports of entry in their vehicle with drugs like that. And these two ladies were of that ability. They had made numerous crossings in the 2-week period before they were finally arrested with the 750,000 fentanyl pills. So cartels are going to find people, young people are going to fit the bill where they could be someone that could cross the border and bring those pills across. Absolutely.
And this talks about them being indicted, but ultimately they were convicted. Is that correct?
They were convicted. They took plea agreements, and they're in prison.
They didn't have any criminal history, as I remember, before they were caught for this.
That's right. Zero criminal history. They talked about how they had a cousin who would put them in touch with the person who was they were going to pick the drugs up from. I did a settlement conference with them. You know, frankly, they didn't seem like bad people. They made a terrible, terrible choice that had impact upon so many people, but you would talk to them and think nothing of them as being the terrible person. People get involved in this, and they make this choice for a lot of different reasons to get involved with trafficking, monetary reasons, whatever it may, family reasons. And so people could be recruited from any pool of people to do this type of a crime.
Officer, how are teens getting a hold of fentanyl, and what are some of the slang terms or street names that are associated with it that parents should be aware of?
So, unfortunately, this is accessible just like any other drug. People are getting it from street dealers, from friends, from associates of friends who know someone who can buy it. But the other scary thing nowadays is people are getting it online. Kids are using applications, or using Telegram, Snapchat, Facebook Messenger. There's different groups on these apps where you can go on and search blues or 30s or one of the slang terms for these drugs and pop up with someone who's willing to sell it and either meet you on a street corner or ship it straight to your house. The other scary thing is, there's no specific slang name for fentanyl. The most common one is the blue M30 pills, so people call them blues, they call them 30s, they call it Skittles if they dye the pills different colors, they call it Fetty if it's powdered fentanyl, but it's not always a blue fentanyl pill that we find the fentanyl in. It's getting mixed with Xanax, it's getting mixed with Percocets, it's getting mixed with any other drug that you might think you're taking without knowing there's fentanyl in it. These pills aren't being made by doctors who are controlling the amounts of powder that goes into these pills. They're either being made by the Mexican cartels who are shipping them across the border, or they're being made in some mope's garage who buys a bunch of different powders and gets a press and tries to stamp them together himself. No quality control, you're not going to know how much you're getting of each powder he's mixing into these pills. So it makes it very scary and very dangerous.
Stephanie, what are some warning signs that your child is struggling with substance abuse, and what are some resources that parents can use to monitor social media?
Well, piggyback off the social media, like you're saying, like most of these drug deals are done on the phones. So right off the bat, we've got to monitor phones. And I give myself a little credit when working with kids. They seem to like me for some reason up front. But then by the end, I'm like, I'm not going to be your best friend. To tell you right now, I were your parent, you would not have a phone in your room overnight. I would explain to them that I'm trying to save their lives because they have access to the Snapchat and the Telegram and they're playing around. And I can give you countless stories of kids playing on the internet, ordering something delivered like a pizza to the front door at 3 a.m. when the adults are sleeping. I try to explain to these kids, first and foremost, disrespect. That's not your house, that's your parents' house. Who opens the door at 3 a.m.? Not a rational brain adult, we'd be all afraid. They open doors, they're taking pills, they can die on the spot. So I think right off the bat, you've got to control the phones, you've got to monitor them. I use the words common sense a lot, so this should be memorable for you. Common Sense and commonsensemedia.org. Go to Common Sense Media. Oh, good, we have slides. I'm like, I keep forgetting to turn around and look, but Bark should be up there. There's a lot of different parameters and controls that you can put together. I know another one that just off the top of my head, Smart Social. And if you go to smartsocial.com and sign up for their emails, you get the slang term and the emojis and the things that you should be familiar with. And I already forgot the question. I keep going back to yours because I like piggybacking off of it. But the M30s. You know, there's an app on, not an app, just an emoji on your phone with a blue M. And that gets sent a lot. I mean, I see some of the guys shaking their heads in the front row to validate me that this is a way to communicate, and that means fentanyl. And you don't know how many times I do a seminar and I put the blue M on the screen and people are like guessing, meth, MDMA, no, fentanyl. So there's really no way to kind of keep up with it. But I think the question was what, about resources?
Yes.
There's some of them. There's so much more. You're the resource. You're the parent. Maybe you're not the parent. I'm not a parent. I'm a positive adult role model to other people's kids. I will call out half of my friends that are in this room just from the gym that came tonight because they know that this is my job and they are parents and I want them to have information. And maybe someday the parents that are here don't want to talk to their kids or the kid doesn't want to ask mom and dad. But they might text me or ask me because I'm not mom. So keep a protective circle around your kids. You don't want them growing up with, oh my gosh, I got my information from social media and a movie and my friends and the internet. How about from the coach and the counselor and the neighbor and the positive adult role model and the cousin and the friend that has this information, right? You create the circle around your kids. Because again, we can't state this enough. This is everywhere. And as Arizonans, we really need to be on heightened alert about this. So I can elaborate afterwards. There's so many more resources that we can give you. I mean, visit the tables outside, right? There's a lot of resources. There's a lot of take-home material. I'm going to wait because I know there's a question about other resources, so I'll wait.
Thank you. Doctor, what are the signs that somebody is going through an overdose, and what should we do if we think somebody is having an overdose reaction?
Some of the signs of overdose are decreased mental status, decreased respiratory rate, and pinpoint pupils. If they basically are unresponsive, the first thing you do is have somebody call 911. If you have these, administer them. They are fairly simple to administer. They have boxes out there. Oh, thank you. So I'll pass one around so you guys can take a look. Basically, all you do is the red button there. All you do is push it and
What is Narcan, by the way?
So once they become unresponsive, the 911 should be called. Narcan should be administered, and the 911 will guide you through if you need to perform CPR. A lot of these people come to the emergency department because they were last seen normal. The kid was seen last normal half hour before. Mom, dad, friend, whoever went, and now they're unresponsive. They call the EMS and they show up to the emergency department. If the EMS has been able to keep them alive by the time we get them, it's chaos to basically keep them alive. Give them Narcan, keep giving them Narcan doses after doses to see if they get a response, because we're talking one of these is supposed to be theoretically for one dose, right? We're talking, we've taken 40, sometimes before, while the nurses are getting IV, I would administer 8 cans of these to the patient before we're getting ready to get everything else started. So this is like the first line of therapy. If we do end up saving the patient, they usually go, and a lot of them become organ donors. I have personally, I would say I have at least pronounced 20 people dead from fentanyl overdose. All ages, all ages. I had a 16-month-old that died, that later on the autopsy was fentanyl. And there is, for me, having practiced medicine many years, one of the worst things for me is the wailing of the mother when she finds out that her kid is dead. That cry, that noise, you will never forget it. And it's a sound that I hate hearing.
What exactly is Narcan, and is it something that we should have in our homes? Can we keep them in our cars even during the summer?
Narcan is a reversal agent for any kind of opiates, including fentanyl. So it's a reversal agent. You can keep it at home. It's supposed to be in room temperature or in a refrigerator. In a car in Arizona, probably not the best thing. But maybe in the purse, maybe in a bag, something that goes with you.
Stephanie, where can I get Narcan?
I kind of giggled because how many of you grabbed it before you came in this room? Yay, that's a good start. There's more boxes out there. Make sure you grab it. I was able to access it so fast because I had it in my purse. Don't judge the purse. I had it in, it matches, right? But yeah, I was able to reach in because that was going to be my point. More than where do you give it, where do you get it, do you have it? Again, between Arizona and in the car, it's better than nothing if you have it and you have to use it and it's in the car, but it's not the best place to keep it. You should be carrying it on you. And I know a lot of the guys are going, I don't have a bag. I've heard there's man purses. But keep it in a briefcase, carry it with you. Just take it out of the container. You saw it almost looks like Flonase. You put it between your fingers and press up with your thumb. You could put it in a pocket. But bigger than that, I'm going to ask my friend Carrie Davidson. I know I see you're already recording this, but put your hand up, stand up. I want you guys to meet him and talk to him afterwards. We have a slide. Carrie is the creator of NAR Stop, which has a patent pending. That should look very familiar to you because it almost looks like an AED, right? This device, again, patent pending, can give you more information. We have the brochures tonight. You guys are the first place where we're talking about this and launching this. This device would house the Narcan. And some of you are thinking right now, well, Stephanie, you just told us to carry it with you. Do you know how many times him and I have gone to meetings and we've walked in at the front desk and said, hey, where's your Narcan? And some people go, what? What's that? Oh, I'm not even saying that to be funny. Or you go somewhere and they say, oh, it's in this drawer. Well, where? Hold on. Minutes, seconds matter if someone's overdosing. You don't know where it's at and you're thumbing through a drawer, or how many times have we gone and it's locked up with a key and people are trying to get it. This is a big building. Say someone overdoses on campus, right? It shouldn't just be in one drawer where only the nurse knows how to use it. This stuff should be in various locations. It is an emergency. 7 out of 10 pills contain enough fentanyl to kill someone. 42% of the general public know someone that's overdosed and died from this. This is education. This is a preventative device. It houses the Narcan. So I will tell you that you need to speak with me or Carrie afterwards on how to obtain these for offices, for buildings, for schools. Ideally, I mean, I give him all the credit in the world. We want this to be successful around this country, but we're going to launch this through Arizona. And I mean, for the media that's here tonight, this is the first place we're really even publicly speaking about this. It's that important that people know where it's at and how to use it. And it's a great conversation piece too, when you can just use a QR code on the device and learn, well, what is it? How do I do it? Who's died from it? Sometimes people just need a reason to start talking about this. So life-saving device that's not going to hurt someone that doesn't need it, right? We've had even adult kids, college-age kids, can I have that? Can I have one? Yeah, because they know that they need the Naloxone or the name brand Narcan. They need to be carrying this because they know people that are dying from this. And if you really knew me, I'll take it one step further. I'll protect all the animals. I know we've got Desert Drug Dog here tonight. Their dogs go out and sniff and detect drugs. They're trying to save our lives. What do you think is going to happen to that dog if it sniffs fentanyl? You can Narcan a dog. Yes, you can. You can save all the lives. All lives matter.
If I can piggyback one thing off of what Stephanie was saying, there's a few pieces of life-saving gear that every police officer in Scottsdale is issued. We get tourniquets, we get chest seals for gunshot wounds, for vehicle accidents, but every officer also carries Narcan. Fortunately or unfortunately that we have to use it, but fortunately every officer has it, and that's one of the most popular things that we use. I think officers use Narcan in Scottsdale more than any other life-saving equipment. So that should tell you that how prevalent it is and how important it is to have around.
And I don't think you should be scared to carry it. Because I think some people go, oh my gosh, right, I've done this for 20 years. Oh, I don't want to go to that seminar. Then people think that I need to learn information about drugs. Yeah, you do. All of you do. And it's just, oh, maybe I shouldn't carry that because then people will think, you might see someone slumped over at a gas station, at a grocery store. Hence the reason these devices should be everywhere. Hence the reason this should be carried everywhere. Save a life.
You can also obtain Narcan from pharmacy. You don't need a prescription, and just kind of like condoms, they're not there to judge. They're, if you need it, they're there to dispense. No questions asked.
Prevention.
Along those lines, Jeff, Arizona has a Good Samaritan law related to this. Can you explain to us what that means?
Sure, we do. The legislature passed a law. It is a law, and it's called the Good Samaritan law, with the idea being that if someone is experiencing an overdose, a drug overdose, and they themselves call 911, they cannot be prosecuted for a possession of that drug crime, okay? Now, same thing goes if you are with someone who is experiencing an overdose. If you're with that person, and maybe you also have that drug with you with that person, maybe you're using together, you can't be prosecuted for calling 911 to get help for that person who's overdosing. The idea being, we don't want there to be a barrier to calling for help, calling for medical help. When that overdose is happening, call 911. And this law exists for that very reason, where we aren't going to prosecute you for the crime of possessing one of these drugs when you're trying to reach out for help.
So Stephanie, you mentioned how much opioid use there is in the United States. How can we teach people about achieving natural highs so that they don't turn to drug use for them?
I don't want kids or people to become the headlines. I tell kids all the time, I'm your advocate. I'm not here to waste your time. I know when we do like school seminars and what have you, that sometimes the kid might feel like they're going to tune out, or this is boring, or I've already heard this. We need to be direct and honest. You know, I'm so glad you're all triggering me to talk about certain things when you talked about babies being poisoned by this, and we use the word poison. When is it time to start talking to kids about this? Often and early. There's accidental poisonings happening with toddlers and newborns. I mentioned pets. So I think like this is the first step of getting the information, but I don't want people to become the headline news. you asked the resource, or sorry, I'm trying to, so many
Well,
things I want to say.
Achieving a natural high and not.
Oh, natural high. Exactly. What do they love? You can all figure out I love pets. So do a lot of people. 70% of American households have animals that they consider family members. That's one example of love and responsibility, natural high. I got to get home. I got to take care of my pets. Do they love being athletic? That's the cliche. So what if they love computers and reading? Find their passion, push them towards that so that they can have their natural highs. I don't know what it is about this country that 80% of opioid use is consumed here in America to feel, I don't want to say better, but to feel something. We've got to come up with those natural highs. So other modalities, other therapies, it's not bad to put yourself first and take care of yourself. Exercise, whether that's walk the dog, go for a hike, meditate, take deep breaths, read, get a massage. It's okay to take care of yourself, and teach this to kids very, very early, because I know a lot of them are stressed and struggling, and we don't want them to be the coping mechanism that the friend gave them something to try. And I'm the daughter of law enforcement, so I grew up with really enforceful. You don't talk to strangers. You don't take things from them. You don't know what that is. You don't take things from your best friends nowadays. You know, I'm not afraid to tell a kid there's no room for experimentation. You can't even be curious or bored nowadays. We've seen the campaign, grab the brochures on the way out, that one pill can kill. One use can kill. So yes, push them towards their passions, get them connected to things that matter so that it doesn't end up being this.
Well, first of all, deep thanks to all of tonight's panelists and presenters for taking the time to help educate everybody on this topic. So please give them a round of applause. And I also want to thank our wonderful vendors who set up booths outside that you saw when you were coming in. And with that, we will take questions. Like I said, we have microphones set up at the foot of each stairs case. So if you have a question, let us know. Okay. Sir.
So that's a tough one. I mean, what comes in through like people who enter illegally it's hard for us to get stats on that because we don't know. But what I can tell you is, from the years I've been doing this, nearly all the bulk quantities that we've seen have been coming across the border illegally. Whether it's coming across on people who are U.S. citizens who are bringing it across in a trap in their car, or whether it's people who are undocumented who are crossing illegally, bringing it in on backpacks. I can't give you an exact percentage, but I just know that's where most of it comes from. Exactly. I can't give you a stat for the person who brings it across, but we've seized drugs coming in off people entering legally and illegally, I can tell you. Sure. That's Those are great questions for our legislatures and for the people that are way over my pay grade. As far as the high level I can talk at is with the enforcement that we do on the ground. I can't tell you what we're doing government to government or at the federal level for the politicians. But those are great questions to bring up to your representatives.
I mean, I can add to that, you know, here in Maricopa County, as a Maricopa County Deputy County Attorney, and Officer Martin here with Scottsdale Police Department, we're seeing seizures from our police departments across the valley all of the time. We're seeing prosecutions that lead from those seizures all of the time. It's a constant stream of fentanyl arrests, seizures, and prosecutions. And I think what you're getting at is what's the federal response, which is, I think, a question that he and I probably won't be able to answer for you.
You know, I can tell you that my counterpart, the Cochise County Attorney, Brian McIntyre, talks, because he's right on the border, talks about how obviously they have a much smaller office. The caseload has gone from 600 cases a year to over 2,000, and they are overwhelmed in Cochise County. So a lot of what you say is true, that we're playing defense. It feels like that. But this is kind of offense, what we're doing tonight. This is educating people so that the addiction doesn't happen, the use doesn't happen. So that's one of the ways we're playing offense. Jeff, yeah.
I think you make a great point, great questions. But I think we don't talk enough, I think in Arizona, certainly in our communities or in our country, about, I think there's an expectation that you have that local law enforcement, state law enforcement, enforce immigration laws, and we don't. And so immigration is the purview of the U.S. federal government, period, the end. Now you're starting to see a number of sheriff's departments around the country. You're starting to see governors around the country starting to send National Guard troops to the border because they've had enough. And so we typically, in local law enforcement, Chad, great job. Sorry, you give the hard question. But the reality is that your local, so the Scottsdale Police Department is not enforcing immigration law. We don't have the purview or authority to enforce immigration law. That is your federal government. And so that's who we have to talk about. That's who we have to hold their feet to the fire in terms of immigration enforcement, because that's not something we're doing. That's not something we can do. So I think your question is valid. We just need to have more community effort and discussion and dialogue. In fact, Representative Chaplik and I had this very conversation at lunch a month or so ago about immigration enforcement. So it is at the federal level, and if you have the expectation that Arizona DPS or Scottsdale PD or Phoenix PD is going to enforce immigration, they're not. It's not in our purview.
Really good point, Chief. Thank you. Jack. So the question for people up there is, you know, we saw the example of the two sisters that have came across several times. We have drug sniffing dogs at the border. Are they able to detect this?
Yeah, so I mean, not being part of Border Patrol or Customs Enforcement, I can say just from firsthand experience being down there that we do have multiple methods they use to help try and screen these people coming across the border. They use dogs, they use high-tech scanners, they use multiple devices, people in person, questioning people. But, I mean, the influx is just so strong, we can't scan every person coming in. And that's just from what I see personally. Obviously, I can't speak as a Border Patrol agent.
So in terms of the federal government stats, what the DEA will tell you is that in 2022 and 2023, over half of the fentanyl that they seized in the United States, over half, both years, was seized here.
Yeah.
So that's how much is hitting in Arizona. I saw this hand up, and then I'll get to you. Yes, ma'am. And doctor, can you repeat that before you answer?
Yeah, from the time that they're being drugged until you need to contact. Right. Right. Great question. Like they were talking about, the drugs that are coming in are at different concentrations. Some of them have very lethal concentrations in a fraction of the pill, and some of them are sugar pills. So when you are dealing and you think that you're dealing with an overdose, the things that you look for is decreased mental status, where they are groggy and their respirations become shallow and their pupils become pinpoint, very small. So that's the process that it goes through. Now, if they become unresponsive, that's when you need to call 911. And the sooner you call, the better. Because some of these drugs, as they get absorbed, then you might be too late. So if you suspect, go ahead and call. Paramedics will come by and they will evaluate the patient and they'll determine if the patient needs to be transported to the hospital or not. So the safest thing to do is, if you suspect overdose, go ahead and call.
All right, I saw a question up here.
I don't know the answer to the percentage.
Yeah,
That's why I was waiting for you to
exactly.
give that. I think the majority of the time they're not, well, I shouldn't say majority. It's hard to say. Once they're educated about fentanyl, common sense would be no one wants to die and do fentanyl. Do you know what I mean? So I got a call from the media just the other day about talking about Adderall mixed with fentanyl, right? Everything can be tainted. That's the way we've got to look at it. That's the way we've got to talk to kids about this. They have to understand, again, we're close. We couldn't even see in that little baggie the dosage in there. You will not see it. When we talk about the touch thing, I always give the example of you could stick your fingers here and you don't even know, and you don't wash your hands and you rub your nose or wipe your eyes or eat your food. You could be poisoned from this stuff. We've just got to be so straightforward with these kids that it could be in marijuana. It could be in a pill. It could be in a liquid. It could be in a vape. It could be in absolutely anything. So I don't really know, but I'm going to say this, and I'm glad it came up because of where we're sitting and where we're at. 5 years ago last month, what happened at this school? Google it yourself. And I've been doing this 22 years. I'm not going to hold back on this because prevention is before the problem. I did multiple news interviews on this campus when multiple kids were using fentanyl. And one kid overdosed, dad called, got help. There was an arrest made at Notre Dame Prep. That's not throwing anyone under the bus. This is every school in America. If you can tell me one school where there's not a drug problem, you found a magic school. This stuff is everywhere, and we can't tiptoe around it. Prevention is before the problem. You can't just assume once your kid becomes an 18-year-old or a senior, they made it out of high school, that they're safe. They're probably going to be more exposed in their 18 to 25-year-old age group, whether it's from military to vacation to college. This stuff, this is the culture we're living in now. That pills are a problem, and they're probably tainted. 7 out of 10, that's a probably.
I saw a question over here.
I don't think kids are taking it to die. I mean, if we're going to be real direct about this, once they get educated, they probably can use it that way. Again, I'm not going to tiptoe around this, but a lot of the times You're asking from a rational brain standpoint. You're not 15. 15-year-olds are uninformed. They aren't watching the news. Do you know what I mean? That's why we've got to treat them. I always tell, I'll use my friends out here. One of her kids is 10 years old, and I always say your kid's a 10-year-old, 40-year-old, because I tell her straight up what's going on, what's happening, and why you can't take this. Or, you know, even a kid at Desert Ridge might pick up a piece of candy off the floor. Wash your hands, don't touch that. So I think it's a lot of unknown, unsuspecting. They need to be educated. We need to treat kids like adults in terms of telling them what is fentanyl, because if you do any kind of these national drug surveys, majority of them are uninformed about that. I mean, I could sit here and ask the rest of you, what's U47700? What's carfentanil? What's a nitazine? They're all other forms of opioids and fentanyl that most of you don't know. I'm only forced to know it because that's my job. So just share information. And I know the rest of us can probably answer with something about the trafficking and the cartels or where it's coming from. Oh, the prices and things like that?
Yeah, it's for the why they're making it there and shipping it in. It's supply and demand. They can make these pills for nothing, pennies on the dollar to make these pills. They bring them here and they're selling for a couple bucks a pill. They're making 100 times profit. And that's where the bigger issue is. I was talking to my chief before we came up here about the amount of pills we've been seizing lately. I mean, we could seize 1 million pills a day. As long as there's still a demand, they're going to keep making them. They're going to keep shipping them in. I mean, we seize pills nonstop every day, every week. But if there's a supply here and people are willing to pay for them, they're going to keep making them and keep bringing them in. So that's where the education comes in, to educate the kids, educate people using these things, and try and get the problem stopped on that end. Then the supply will go away.
Can I just elaborate on changing the norm? Like, we've got to come up with other modalities and alternatives, like Rachel had asked at the end. For those of you who haven't seen the show Dope Sick, anyone seen it? The rest of you have homework. Watch it. It will explain to you the opioid crisis, how it started, the prevalence, the availability, the addiction. This just didn't happen because someone was bored and got high. This is a problem in the United States of America. And again, supply and demand. America is demanding opioids. The cartel supplies what we demand. We need to step it up and have higher standards for ourselves. And let's change the culture. Let's change future youth's behaviors by just doing this, starting here, making a change.
And that's how we're going to put the cartels out of business, by cutting the supply. We have to work here, really. I mean, I don't want to make this political, but really, we have to take care of our own. It doesn't matter. I mean, Apple is selling phones, right? If we stop, they won't sell anymore. So we have to stop, we have to get educated, and we have to stop the demand.
Yes, please.
Please.
Michael, and I am a 36-year-old recovering fentanyl addict. Now, I've heard a lot of words tonight like educate and reform and all that stuff, but one thing I haven't been hearing about is mental health. Mental health is a huge issue that we need to pay a lot more attention to, because that's the main issue I believe addiction stems from. I know mine stems from trauma, mental health. I've actually gone through community bridges. I've been arrested by your police department. So it all comes back to mental health. And I want to know what Stephanie and Chad, what you guys think as far as, like, I've always believed incarceration is for, yes, the quote unquote bad guys. Transporting, bring across the border, manufacturing, sales, whatever. But a person like me, a homeless addict on the street who is sitting behind a dumpster trying to survive, trying to get food to live, and is also addicted to fentanyl, who would rather smoke fentanyl than eat or do anything pretty much. Being incarcerated is not going to help my addiction. It is only going to stem it further. I believe jail is just a criminal school. I believe that if addicts who are just addicts, not hurt anybody but themselves, and I understand that's a very black and white way to look at it, but I believe it should be rehabs and mental health counselors and everything like that should be brought to addicts more openly and more talked about and more affordable, because people who don't have insurance, I know Access covers a lot of it, but $1,000 a day to go to treatment, a lot of people can't afford that. I know we're in Scottsdale, most of you might be able to afford that, but I can't. And I haven't heard very much about what you guys think about as far as the mental health aspect of it, and I was just curious about what the law enforcement side thinks of it and Community Bridges thinks of it.
I want to say thank you for bringing it up. Thank you for making us
Absolutely.
normalize it
Absolutely.
and talk about it. You know how long ago it was that we couldn't even talk about drugs? You couldn't talk about suicide, you couldn't talk about drugs, and you see me, I don't hold back on this. We all kind of need to change the mentality and talk about mental health, and you used one word that, again, there's limited time, so again, thank you for making us. Trauma. We need to deal with it. We can't overlook it. What's trauma for one person might be different for another person. What's the coping mechanism? We can't just assume a 13-year-old kid, an 18-year-old, a 7-year-old. Look at all the bad things that are happening out there. Trauma's the reason. If I had to give a short-term answer as to why somebody might use a substance, the one-word answer is trauma. Something happened to trigger them to want to feel different, better, worse, right? So first and foremost, we have to acknowledge it. That's a whole, I don't know how much time we have, but that's another bigger conversation that needs to happen at younger and younger ages. Again, why I said advocate for kids, because I don't want them to learn the hard way. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're not a statistic, because a lot of people don't make it. What's unique about Community Bridges is a majority of our employees are in recovery. I mean, anywhere from 75 to 85% of our employees, we're homeless, we're drug addicted, have turned their lives around. So people can do that. We don't want to give up on them. I mean, I'll just share a quick personal. I'm chatting with a fella from Colorado that I've never met. It's a referral from a friend. He's worried about his adult kid here in Arizona who's 29 years old. And again, can't afford services. Is just trying to find his homeless son on the streets. And Steph, can I FedEx the phone to you to work with the PD or the services to get it to him so we can track him down? I get emotional thinking about it. Like, that's one person. So I commend you. I'm so proud of you for standing up and talking about this. But we got to start this and make this a priority in elementary school with our kids and making sure they're okay. And that's why I think it was so important you kept asking about resources, because we need them. And there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And I don't want to take up all the time, so I'll toss it to you guys.
I just wanted to answer this nice lady's question about how a rational mind would think about wanting to use this stuff. I mean, if you think back to when you were a teenager or a young adult in college experimenting, it was weed or coke or ecstasy. It was all the normal drug stuff. But fentanyl is in, like you guys were saying, now in everything. And some people just want to numb themselves. People have a day-to-day job that they hate. They hate going to work. They hate their kids. They hate their parents. It doesn't matter. A rational mind doesn't think about the consequences when they're already an addict. Addict behavior stems long before they pick up the drug. And I just think that it's not necessarily a rational mind picking up a drug like, hey, I want to be a drug addict. They say it all the time in treatment centers. I wasn't born and I didn't dream of becoming a drug addict. This is not how I saw myself when I was 14 years old. Now I'm 36, almost 40, been incarcerated, overdosed, been to 40 rehabs. Like it's impossible to fix it if we don't fix the mental health aspect of it.
Thank you very much.
I'll let you guys answer and I'll sit down.
I'm glad you could get up and say that, and thanks for, I think people need to hear your point of view and hear that. I like to think I can speak for all police officers when I say we got into this job to help people. We're not trying to make your life harder. We're bound by laws and we have to do certain things, but we understand it's an illness. You're not choosing to go out and be an addict. I know nobody wants to do that, so we have resources, Community Bridges, PCIS, our Crisis Intervention Specialist. We try and help you, and that's our ultimate goal. So just know we're not trying to make your life harder if we have to arrest somebody, and Jeff might be able to piggyback off of that, but we understand. We're not coming after you personally, but I mean, we have to do a job if crimes are being committed, our hands are tied there, but our ultimate goal is to get you the help. That's why we're there.
Well, I mentioned that the two sisters with the 750,000 pills that they're in prison. We have different types of prosecutions based on who the offender is and what they're doing. So someone who is suffering from substance use, they have some fentanyl. One of the things that we have in this county, Maricopa County Attorney's Office, has a diversion program, and it's a highly successful diversion program. So you get charged with a crime, and then if you are willing to do the program, then you get screened for what's the best way to help this particular person. And if you successfully complete that program, the felony charges are gone forever. It's just gone. Now, I say successful because people that have completed the program 12 months later, 95% of them have not had another submittal to our office from police, which is outstanding. Now, let's just say that the person goes through a diversion program, but it doesn't work, okay? We usually allow people to go in for a second time into our diversion program, give it a second crack. Let's say that doesn't work. Well, then in Arizona, we have mandatory probation laws. It's called Proposition 200, first and second strikes. Some people may have heard of that, right? So first time that you have a drug offense, unless it's meth, which has a different set of rules, but the first time that you have a drug offense, it's mandatory probation. Second time, it's mandatory probation. And so in our office, we are looking at who the person is, and we are trying to provide resources from the criminal justice system side as best as we can for those cases. Now, the people that are trafficking in huge amounts of drugs, they get different treatment. And so that's how we're evaluating these on a case-by-case basis.
Sir.
How much actual feedback are you getting from the recovery community? And I'm not just talking about CBI or Axiom where I work or any of these other places that provide mat services or anything, but from actual recovering addicts. They're actually in recovery. Because recovery is not linear. There's people doing 12-step recovery. There's people doing smart recovery. You know, it's really, from what I've seen, I lived in Sunny Slope. I was slamming dope in my neck, you know what I mean? And it got even worse when fentanyl came around. Fentanyl was $10, $20 a pill, like you guys mentioned. And then the supply came, and I was able to get them at 30 cents a pill and try to make a profit off them because I was homeless on the streets, you know what I mean? So if I could take $300 and turn it into $1,000, that's $700 profit, you know, and that didn't stop me from doing anything I was doing. What actually stopped me was having warrants for my arrest because I had 4 probation violations for 1 probation. Then I had 2 from another one I didn't even know I was on, you know, and I actually had to go to my treatment, which was the Arizona Department of Corrections, and spend some time out and reevaluate myself, and then get placed into a place called New Freedom. I don't know if you've heard of them, you know, but New Freedom is a wonderful program. You know, 90 days there, I was able to hit the ground running and be able to come and work where I work now and be able to bring guys with me over to this meeting, you know. So what my question is, how much of this feedback are you getting from the recovery community and people who are actually taking steps towards their recovery on a daily basis and to help you guys figure out what to do with this problem?
Well, I can tell you in our diversion program, we actually have,
Yeah, I was in stage 2.
yeah, we do track it statistically, but it's great to hear from that. Do you want to talk about that, Jeff or Stephanie, in terms of outside of that?
I think the place where our office is going to get that is through our diversion program. So when we have our diversion program administrators, I'm not one of those people, but they are going to get that feedback from the professionals that are working with the community.
You know who you're helping? Is everyone in this room. All the people that don't know or are afraid to ask. You know what I mean? So I commend your honesty, your directness. I applaud, appreciate, you can tell I'm right there with you. Let's be honest and direct approach to get people to wake up. I'm so tired of, 20 plus year career, the just thing. Oh, it's just marijuana, it's just alcohol, it's just what? We've had this poor attitude, as I've seen it with parents, that they think it's no big deal, it's just this, at least it's not that. So I think this, with you guys talking, kind of grabs people's attention in this room that it can happen to anyone, right? You just said, I didn't set out to become. What 14-year-old really knows what they're going to be? And I think from my perspective, a lot of times I'm like trying to offer different life paths. You know, I've had at, what I want to say, alternative type schools over my career, kids tell me like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do if my uncle or dad's an addict and gave me a pill or I smoked this and I was 9? Don't put your blinders on and think it doesn't happen. I remember telling kids way back when, maybe that's why you met me, another perspective, another path, another option. You have no idea the impact you can have on someone else. Not just a kid, but a person. We all struggle. We don't all share it though. So I mean, you guys like speaking up, maybe that's the next meeting, the next talk is hearing from real people who've really been there. Again, doing this for so long, we had those Crystal Darkness documentaries. What was the heroin one called? Barbara, you would remember, what was the, Unhooked. We need to do more widespread documentary conversation, not just at one school, and hope people show up. I can't tell you when I look out here how many resources I know that are in this room. Community Medical Services, put your hand up. Dave, Carrie sitting there, Not My Kid, Barbara Brown. There's so many people in this room that care and want to help. So utilize us.
So I'm going to be cognizant of everybody's time. We're going to cut off the formal questions here, but these panelists are going to stick around. So feel free to come up and ask them questions. Thank you for coming out. But here's your other homework assignment. It's not just you, Stephanie. I'm going to give them one too. Go tell somebody. Go talk to your kid. Go tell your neighbor who has kids, because that conversation could save a life. So again, thank you to all of our presenters. Thank you. Thank you to our elected officials that showed up. Jack Sellers represents this area for the Board of Supervisors, right? And this is just part of it. People that go here in your area. And I have to tell you, the Board of Supervisors has been so supportive of the county attorney's office and the sheriff's office and giving us the resources to deal with this just absolute nightmare that we're dealing with. Thank you, Representative Joe Chaplick. You know, we routinely work with the Arizona legislature, and they help, you know, with passing laws that make it better for us to enforce. Thank you, Jeff Walther from Scottsdale PD Chief. Great partnership that we have with Scottsdale PD. Mayor couldn't stick around, but thank you to the Scottsdale City Council as well. So thank you, everybody, and come on up and ask questions if you have them.
We get a selfie of the four of us too, so you know me, I'm big on that. I would love